and I'm so pleased that you are here this evening. My name is Elizabeth Drembus, and I am the genealogist with the William and Mary Bray School Lab, in service to the Bray School Lab's mission to uncovering and documenting, preserving, and disseminating the history and the legacies of the Williamsburg Bray School. We host a monthly series on Zoom in order to share recent genealogical findings, engage the descendant community in this work in order to broaden our understanding of those legacies. And we enlist the help of historians and genealogists, as well as the general public, in furthering the conversations and the research surrounding the Williamsburg Bray School. The title of the monthly series is Bray School Stories, and this evening's focus is on brick walls and pitfalls. We've all got them, so let's go ahead and talk about them. But first, some housekeeping items for those of you who have just joined us. Once again, we are recording this session. It will be available later on our YouTube channel. To find it, simply Google Bray School Lab YouTube. That's also where you'll find past recordings from other sessions. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to access the recording later from our YouTube channel. Our monthly sessions are designed to spark conversation. So I will share a slide and some information and then pause to hear comments, questions, reflections, if anybody has anything they want to add to it, and invite you to share your thoughts and your questions at those times, either by putting questions in the chat, raising your hand, or even just asking a question. It's a pretty casual group here this evening. Okay, so let's get started. So first, we want to share some news from the William and Mary Bray School Lab. You may have already, if you subscribe to our bulletin, you may have already heard about these two happenings, but I wanted to share them out with the group this evening. The first one is we have been awarded, the lab has been awarded, along with our descendant community partners and Colonial Williamsburg partners, a leadership in excellence from the American Association for State and Local History. It's kind of a really special award because it's not only acknowledging the publication of the Bray School book that came out in the fall, but also all the collaboration that's gone into not only that book, but all the work that's being done here in Williamsburg about the Williamsburg Bray School. So that QR code will take you right to the press release that tells a little bit more about the award. The other article that you might have been already seeing, it's been picked up by quite a number of news media outlets, but there has been continued archaeological work at the site of where the original Bray School building sat. At the corner of Prince George Street and Boundary Street. Now remember, the Bray School building sat at that corner from the school was in existence there from 1760 to 1765. The school outgrew that space and then they went to another building. That building still sat at that corner and was used for other purposes until about the 1930s when they moved that building up the street on Prince George to build what it became Brown Hall, which was a dormitory. There's more construction going on at that site now, and through some of the construction and the archaeology, the original foundation of the Williamsburg Bray School, as well as an unknown before unknown cellar, has been located and identified. And what I understand is the foundation is nearly intact. And so this was a really exciting discovery that even now, even in Williamsburg, with all of the history and all the archaeology that's been done, they're still finding new things. And honestly, the Williamsburg Bray School is still sharing its stories with us today. And so this was really exciting, and that QR code will take you to that news article. So I commend those to you. So let's see. Get a few more people in here.
No, don't go out there with a dog. Please don't.
There's some chats.
Please don't.
Okay. Any chance that a set of rosters was discovered when the original foundation was discovered? Boy, I wish I could tell you that there were, but that was not something that was found. But there have been quite a few other things that were found. that were also very interesting. But yes, for my work, I really wish more rosters had been found, but sadly that was not the case. We keep hoping though. We keep hoping. So, all right, we're going to go on to, let's see, where am I? All right. June has been a really busy month for us in the lab. We have been welcoming in CHIP interns to help us work in the lab, and I'm going to talk about one in particular a little bit later on. But we have been fortunate to participate in the Juneteenth celebrations that were held at Sadler at Sadler Center on William & Mary's campus. And we also were so thrilled to be a part of the groundbreaking ceremony and the ribbon cutting for the First Baptist Meeting House site, where the First Baptist Church is going to be reconstructed on its original location on Nassau Street. And then right after that groundbreaking ceremony, we were able to participate in the ribbon cutting. And now the Williamsburg Bray School is open to the public 7 days a week from 10 to 5. And so please come see us and explore the building. And then we also had a wonderful opportunity to spend the afternoon at James Monroe's Highland in Charlottesville. It was an afternoon of celebrating the descendants of the enslaved people who were at James Monroe's plantation there. It was a lot of fellowship, a lot of great food, amazing singing and storytelling and music. It was just a lovely, lovely event. And if you get a chance to, it's held every June. If you get a chance to, I totally recommend going and participating in that event. It is spectacular, and our interns had a wonderful time at that event. For those of you interested in some more genealogy, I want to bring to your attention the Summer Sankofa Genealogy Workshop that's being held here at William & Mary, and that is going to be on Saturday, June 19th. And let me see if we can get a few more people in here. There we go. And that's going to be on Saturday, July 19th from 11 to 5:30. I believe the in-person registration might have already filled up, but it is going to be hybrid. So if this Zoom space is a comfortable space for you, you may want to consider registering. You can see the agenda right there. It's going to be some really great speakers from the Library of Virginia and from Ancestry, sharing a really good genealogy information. So I recommend that event to you all as well. Any questions before we actually get into the topic for this evening's session? No? All right, let's go. All right, like we said, brick walls. Everybody has them. I've got them plenty, even in my own family, as well as with the Williamsburg Bray School research that we're doing. So what do we mean when we talk about brick walls, or how does a brick wall kind of happen? Well, it is, let me let somebody else in. What happens is sometimes we have to face the fact that records don't exist. This could be for a lot of reasons. It could be that a record wasn't taken, and that we find that a lot when we are looking at certainly doing African-American genealogy, especially when we're looking at enslaved genealogy. Sometimes the records just were not done. They weren't taken. Sometimes records don't exist because of natural disasters or carelessness. We have things called burned counties. So those are courthouses that would have been burned down either because of natural disasters, fires, or through the Civil War, Revolutionary War records, any number of reasons why those records don't exist. It's a true thing. Records just sometimes don't exist. I kind of still go with the hope that somewhere in someone's attic, there's going to be a trunk that someone's going to have the records that I need for the Bray School Scholars. I know this probably wishful thinking, except that I've seen it happen before with other projects, so I always hold out hope. But what we'll talk about tonight is when records don't exist, what can we do to kind of work around that, that brick wall? Another reason why we might have brick walls is that we don't know what records to use or even where to find them. If someone says, oh, you're researching so-and-so, what you just need to do is just go find the obituary, or you need to go find the census record. Okay, that's fine. I think I can figure out an obituary is in a newspaper, but what sources are there for newspapers? And where am I gonna, how do I search for this obituary? Or if someone says you need to look for the will, okay, well, where does a will, where are those stored? And do I have to go across the country to do it? How do I get to where this will is? And how do I search for it, even if I know that it might be online? So sometimes we just don't know, and that kind of puts up a barrier that we just say, well, I don't understand how to do it. I'm maybe not gonna, I don't know how to tackle this. And so we just put up our own kind of temporary brick wall. So it's going to be important to learn and figure out kind of where and how to use those records. And in addition, you may have a record, but you don't know how to fully use the information. And so you just kind of get stumped. What all information can I glean out of a census record? Is it just going to be the names and the ages? Well, it could also be the occupation. It could be when an ancestor was naturalized in this country, which would give you an indication of when that person may have migrated. If you have a list of family members and you have mom and dad born in, say, South Carolina, and the first 2 or 3 children are also born in South Carolina, but then all of a sudden you realize the other kids are born in another state. Is that the state where the census record is that you're looking at? That would give you an indication of when they left one state and moved to the next. Who are the neighbors? And you look like 1 or 2 pages back and 1 or 2 pages forward. What's the community look like? What's the community makeup? Are we talking about an urban area? Are we talking about a rural area? And so it really is taking the record that's in front of you and gleaning every possible bit of information out of that. When you're talking about a will or a deed, you want to look at not just where the land that's being purchased or the property that's being purchased is located. You want to look at all the names that are associated in that deed. That's including anybody who's signing it as a witness or a trustee. You want to look at all of those things because all of those might just be clues to get you over that wall and to that next step. So any questions, clarifications, comments? Anybody else want to share about their own brick walls? Happy to have the conversation. Anyone? All right, I'm going to go ahead on. So we talked about brick walls.
Yeah, I just got unmuted, Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
I did want to share one thing that we definitely found about brick walls. It's we're in Montgomery County, Maryland, and
Okay.
we have our church was founded by all slaveholders in Montgomery County, and one of the brick walls that we've run into, we took a hard look at one of the primary slaveholders in our area, and they did a great job of making sure money was set aside to preserve the white cemetery. There's 22 graves in that cemetery, and then when we realized that they, over the period of quite a number of decades prior to the Civil War, there was a slave cemetery that contained over, they estimate 1,000 slaves were buried in that cemetery. And we found, it was very sad that we found out that the Montgomery County Park and Planning Commission had permitted development over the top of this slave cemetery. So yeah, we're sort of devastated, and we want to do something about breaking down brick walls to recognize these slaves. And we've even identified some of the names of the slaves, quite a number of them.
Okay.
Up to 135. but we don't know where to go from here. So
Right.
We're in that situation.
we're in the same situation.
Yeah, exactly. Happy to have a conversation a little bit about that. But yeah, that is not, unfortunately, that is not uncommon. So that there are, I've seen too many, enslaved cemeteries buried over, covered over, development comes in, or even, bodies are moved, to other cemeteries without headstones. And so it's very difficult to know, and to find out who those people were. But it's not impossible if, so my first thoughts would be church records, as well as, I mean, the way that you've identified 135 people, that seems to me that you're probably using records from the enslaving families that may have indicated, right? And so it's going to be a matter of going through all the members of the church and their individual records to track and see whether they have mentioned when in their estate ledgers and account books when people died. If there's notation about being buried, that would be, it's going to be tedious, it's going to be tricky, but it's not impossible, but it will take some effort. Yeah.
And diaries.
Definitely diary, absolutely.
Diaries. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I wish you some good luck on that. And if we want to have a conversation later, please feel free to email the lab. We can, yeah.
Thank you,
I
Elizabeth.
can,
Thank you.
Sure. I see some questions in the chat. So are there baptismal records at the church in Montgomery County? Would they have recorded enslaved baptisms at all? Do you know?
That's a good idea, and we are pursuing that with the
We have
blacks.
read all the Diocese of Maryland records from the time when the priests actually recorded things with the diocese, but not in our vestry records. So we do have those.
Okay.
However, they haven't named the people. They haven't named them, so it's very difficult.
Okay. So yeah, so if it sounds like the church has taken some of their records and stored them at the diocesan level, that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes they're a little bit safer than in the parish, but it makes it tricky to try and figure out where they may have been saved, as well as how they would have been cataloged. So it sounds like you're on the right track. Sometimes it just takes time, and it takes some creative digging, but it sounds like you're doing the right stuff. I will say that.
Thank you.
Challenge.
Yeah, we spent 9 months working on it. So
Oh, you're just getting started then.
oh, okay. Thanks.
Absolutely. There was a question in the chat. Is there a source for understanding words used in wills in the 17 and 1800s? I'm going to, where's my book?
Yeah.
First book I would recommend is this book. It is called A to Zach's, A Comprehensive Dictionary for Genealogists and Historians. It will have a lot of definitions from previous time periods, but for wills and that is going to be a lot of legal language. So you may also want to consider looking up Black's Law Dictionary, because some of those older words might be in there, and you can have those original meanings for what they meant at that time period. Yeah. Goodness. So baptism. Oh, so Teddy Ashby is one of our descending community members, and for William, she says baptisms may not have been an option for Black people. Did they ever mention the years? Did you mention the year the church was started? Do you know when did your church start in Montgomery County?
Elizabeth, it started in 1842.
Okay. I gotta say, I'm a little jealous. That's a better time period than kind of what we're working with. So.
Oh yeah. lot more records available.
Yeah. Okay, all right, this is great. All right, we're gonna go on to, oh, what was the denomination? Is it Episcopal by any chance?
Yes, Episcopalian.
Episcopalian. Yep. There's some good stuff going on in the Episcopal Church right now as far as certain churches taking on this reconciliation work. So I applaud you for doing that. Thank you.
That's why we're doing it.
I'm glad you're aware of that,
Okay.
Elizabeth. Yes, our bishop, Mary Ann Buddy, is really big on reconciliation.
Mhm.
They're doing a lot at the Washington diocese.
Good. Yep. Yep. All right, folks, I want to be mindful. Okay, so that increases. So Renata, who is a very good genealogist, who I adore, who comes on to my Zoom session, she's saying that the Episcopal Church increases the likelihood of finding records. We know that some denominations weren't as careful as keeping records, and so you might be in a better situation than if you were in some other denominations. So, but yeah, keep at it. Don't give up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, so we talked about brick walls. Let's talk a little bit about pitfalls. I definitely have fallen into some of these myself. But getting hung up on the spelling of names and exact ages. Let's talk just a little bit about that. When I was at Descendants Day in Highland, I was talking with another genealogist, and they were talking about how people can get a little hung up on if the name is not exactly spelled the same all the time. So if you have an Aggie or an Agatha and an Agnes, are they the same person? Or are they different people? I have an intern who's working on researching Robert Carter Nicholas, who is the trustee of the Williamsburg Bray School. He has been finding it's Nicholson.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure, is this the same person? How do we distinguish? And so we have to remember that who's taking the record? Who's writing this down? Is that person literate? Was there a standard spelling? You know, there really wasn't a lot of standard spelling. It was really written as the way people heard it. And I tell the story all the time in my family. My grandmother, when she was little, her name is Eleanor. And in the one of the census records, I'm sure that my grandfather said Elmer, and the census taker heard Elmer, and so she was listed as Elmer and a boy. That's not her. They didn't have a boy named Elmer. They had a girl named Eleanor. And so you want to make sure that you are kind of keeping your mind open for how names would have been heard, how they could have been written down. And exact ages. So this one kind of gets me every time. We think about tracking people through the census record. So if you are 10 years old in 1910, you should be 20 years old in the 1920 census. You should be 30 years old in the 1930 census. It should work that way. But sometimes the people giving the information in the census record to the census taker aren't the actual family members. You could have a neighbor be telling the census taker that information, because if the family's out that day and the census taker needs to get this work done, he's going to the neighbors. Hey, do you know who lives next door? Do you know who the kids are? Do you know their names? Do you know their ages? And so somebody's estimating. And I've seen really wide variations between census records and ages from that 10-year period to the next 10-year period. Now, that said, ages can actually be a really good indication of when you're trying to distinguish between two people of the same name who were born around the same time. And if you have a discrepancy in their ages, that may be a clue of how to distinguish your two people. So the pitfall is don't get too hung up on the spelling of names and exact ages, but also keep your eyes open for when there are discrepancies and how can that help you distinguish between people. So Ancestry is a great tool, but don't assume that all those little leaves that start flickering on your family tree, all those hints are accurate. They're only going to be as accurate as the information that's being given. And so before you click and add those records to your family tree, look at them first, make sure they make sense. You know, don't start attaching other records that have nothing to do with your family just because it seems like it might be the same name, the same person. And for people who are sometimes just starting out, they do believe that ancestry is only about family trees and DNA matches. But folks, remember, ancestry has an amazing wealth of records available for researching. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Bonnie says that nicknames may also be pitfalls. Through the years, I've lost touch with my father's family and king and queen because we all knew each other by nicknames. I'm reconnecting with some of them through DNA matches. The same thing with my name. She says, I'm Yvonne or Bonnie, depending when and how you met me. So thank you. That's exactly right. What are the nicknames? And are the nicknames being used in the records, or the formal, what people call their government names? Are those being used in the record? So the other ones are kind of self-explanatory. Skipping steps and jumping ahead or jumping backward too fast can lead to some errors when we think that we've maybe gotten the person that is our relative. And I certainly fall into falling into a rut and not using a variety of records. I get so focused on tax records and wills and inventories that I forget to think outside and broader. And so I have to remind myself, wait a second, don't just get all hung up on this. Think about all the rest of the records that are on your checklist that you're supposed to go through for every single person you're researching. And we're going to talk a little bit about checklists as well. So I'm going to go ahead. Anybody questions or comments before we move on?
No.
Nope. Okay. All right. So some pitfalls that I have fallen into with the Bray School research that I wanted to bring to your attention. I don't know if you're familiar with the Family Searches full text AI search feature. It's great, except when it's not. So an example that I have for what happened was I was doing a search for Spotswood Borough in Mecklenburg County. And when I was doing this, I put it into the AI search and these records came up. And I thought, oh, okay. Spotswood Borough, 1829 to 1832, Alexandria County. Okay, that's not who my guy is. I'm looking for Mecklenburg County. Alexandria County is way far north from where I need to be. So this is not a real hit. But you got to be careful. All of a sudden, I was like, wait a second, hold on. Let's just double check. Let's trust but verify. And what actually happened when I pulled up the record, it was actually Mecklenburg County, Will Book number 7, 1810 to 1813. Completely different time period, completely different county. So just don't assume that what the AI search results are showing is what you need. So just be careful on that. The other thing is Lunenburg Tithables list. This was a county I was looking at because we were doing some work in Mecklenburg County. We were researching Isaac B. We were researching Aggie's daughter Kitty. We were trying to find Miss Loretta's Dolly ancestor. And so Mecklenburg County was where they ended up. But what we need to remember is that Mecklenburg County came out of Lunenburg County. And so I wanted to look at Lunenburg County tithable records. And some of you may have seen this before. On the left, you see the secondary source for the Lunenburg tithables list. But in the introduction, it says that they had taken care to preserve all information that would be valuable from a genealogical standpoint. Thus, the names of the slaves have been omitted from all the lists. So if I can't stress this enough, secondary sources versus primary sources. When we talk about archival silences, this is exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about researching enslaved people. We're talking about researching African-American families. A lot of times their names won't be listed in a secondary source because they weren't thought to have been important enough to include. So I went to the Library of Virginia, they had the tithables list, and sure enough, here we are for Armistead Burwell. And it says Armistead Burwell deceased because this record is from 1762. And we were trying to ensure that Dolly wasn't quite there yet, which is what we were hoping. And sure enough, we have all of this list of names of all of these people who were at that plantation in 1762. And if I had just stayed with the secondary source, I would never have even known that all these names existed. And so we've transcribed all of them, and we were able to follow them up until the time when Mecklenburg County was created, and then needed to switch over to Mecklenburg County records. And then this was the assumption that I got myself into. What happened was I was assuming, oh, we've got Lunenburg tithable records on microfilm. Surely we've got Mecklenburg County tithable records as well.
Mhm.
No, they don't. So a cautionary tale about making assumptions. And so we have a gap in the record for Mecklenburg County that I'm going to have to fill in some other way. So secondary sources versus primary sources, making assumptions that if one county records exist, it surely must have exist for the county that it came out of, was not the case. So I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you at one time. Anybody questions so far? Anything that I've said that is confusing, or you want me to repeat? How are we feeling about this? Does all this make sense?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. All right. Then the other thing that we found was commonplace books. You mentioned, William, you mentioned diaries. Commonplace book is a type of diary. And we were very lucky when we were finding the Burwell Powell Commonplace book, because in amongst all the recipes for all kinds of medicinal things and pickles and all kinds of things, we also found these lovely lists of enslaved people's names. And we were trying to distinguish the year that these people were with the Burwell family before they were inherited by the Burwell heirs. And so this commonplace book was a gem, because it gave us the ages of people. No, I'm sorry, not the ages. These were the numbers that are following the people are their valuations. Yes, their
Valuation, yes.
valuations. Yep. So when I was looking for George in Bristol, from George Gilmore's family and household, I found at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture that Gilmore had a commonplace book. Commonplace books are not all the same, and they're definitely not the same between men and women. So this Burwell Powell commonplace book was kept by the women in the household. George Gilmore's commonplace book was quite a recitation on his support for the American Revolution and all of his activities surrounding that, but did not list any enslaved names. So they're not all commonplace books are the same. So don't make the assumption that what you're going to find in one commonplace book, you're going to be able to find in another commonplace book. It was still worth going through the Gilmore commonplace book just on the off chance that we could find George and Bristol. There was no mention of them, but it was also good to get a sense of Gilmore's participation and his feelings about the Revolutionary War. But he also mentioned that he was very, very upset about people who had left with Lord Dunmore. And so that did give us some hope on another Bray School student, Sam, who we believe went off with Lord Dunmore's. But again, Sam's name wasn't mentioned in the commonplace book. We're going to keep digging and keep seeing what we can find. Any questions on commonplace books or how we've been doing this research?
It must be hard to read the writing.
Sometimes it can be really challenging. I've had enough years of looking at this type of handwriting that I've gotten fairly good at it. But there are definitely times where I go to my colleagues and say, hey, can I get a second pair of eyes? What are you seeing when you see this? Is this a T? Is this an L? Did somebody forget to dot their I? Yeah, some of it can be really challenging. And then just like today, you have people who have really, really beautiful handwriting, and then you have some people who do not have beautiful handwriting. The same thing happened in the 1800s and the 1700s as well. Yeah. And it's interesting when you are in someone's records for a while, if you are, reading through court records and there was a clerk of court for a very long time, you start to get used to their handwriting. Or reading a diary, you start to get really used to how they're writing, and so you get really familiar with that particular person's style, and that also then starts to help you be able to distinguish how to read the words. Yeah. All right, so, and then the other brick wall or pitfall that we've had is, are we assuming that there's only one person named Ripon? And we're going to talk a little bit more about Ripon a little bit later, but I just wanted to be able to show you that we do have two Ripons. We have a Ripon that is associated with Benjamin Bates, as well as a Ripon who is associated with Philip Ludwell Lee. And so this Ripon is in 1785. He is listed as free in Benjamin Bates's household. And again, in 1795, he is on his own tax line list as Ripon liberated by Bates. We'll talk a little bit more about Ripon. But then we also have this Ripon, who in 1782 was listed as young Ripon. He's 35 years old. Those are ages on this particular list, not valuations. And he is a carpenter. So if we have a student at the Bray School by the name of Ripon, and then we find two Ripons in two different records, how do we distinguish between? So we're going to show a little bit about how we go about doing that. But again, we don't want to assume that just because someone has the name Ripon that this is automatically our Bray School student. We always hope it's going to be, but we need to be sure that we are looking at all of the records and the locations that we can put together who this person is in the right place at the right time. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So, all right, so those were some pitfalls in the Bray School research. These are going to be some brick walls in the Bray School research. We are missing some key records for John Blair, his estate records. We have a will for him, but we have no estate record. So I'm going to show you some strategies of what we're doing in the lab to kind of compensate for that missing record. When we were tracing Dolly back to the Burwell and the Blair households, we encountered multiple Dollys. And so what do we do about that? How do we approach that? When we were seeking John B was the son of Isaac B. And so we were trying to figure out where John B went after Lewis Burwell passed away. We'll talk a little bit about how we are still got a little bit of a brick wall on that one too. And then Ripon again, we'll talk about which one and how we're going to approach which one is the Bray School scholar. Which one is the Bray School scholar? So strategies from the lab. So when we have a record missing, because either it doesn't exist or it was filed in a different courthouse and we haven't been able to identify where to find that record, we need to have other records. We need to use other records to fill that gap. We're going to talk about timelines and the use of tables and research to-do lists. And we're going to talk about the value of collaborating and partnering. So let's talk first about, we're missing John Blair's estate records. So usually in the ideal world, someone would write a will. When they died, there would be an inventory of their estate listing every single item in the household, including the names of every enslaved person in their household. And then there would be an account record, every expense, every credit, every debt that needed to be paid. And then there would be the estate distribution. And so we would know then where the enslaved people would be going next, whether they were sold, whether they were given to children, whether they were going to the widow. But for John Blair, who was so prominent, we do not have that. All we have is the will. We know that there is some evidence of Isaac B. from the newspaper that he shows up in John Blair's grandson's home. But what can we use to figure out who and where the other enslaved people were? Because we know that John Blair sent 10 children to the Bray School. How are we going to find them?
Wow.
So what are we going to use? We're going to use other records like court records. We're going to use tax records of all of his children. We're going to use land records, newspapers, and again, those family papers. And family papers can include diaries, correspondence, account ledgers, plantation records, any biographies and local histories. These list of records become the to-do list for every single heir that John Blair had, and then their heirs as well. And so we talk about the work is tedious and it's slow going, but to be thorough and to try and fill in those gaps, we need to use every record that may or may not be at our disposal. The ones that are at our disposal, we absolutely need to use. And so for For John Blair, we've mostly been using newspapers, court documents, the commonplace book, which we saw, and the taxation records. And so we have this huge spreadsheet for every year that we have a record for and which child of his. And so we're building the list of enslaved people and putting these, trying to get the sense of who were all the people in his estate and how were they distributed? Because in his will, he only bequeaths, he only mentions about 5 people. And then he says, for the remaining people, I want them divided into 5 lots. And 3 lots are to go to my oldest son, and 2 lots are going to my youngest son. But he doesn't name who those people are. And so without the estate records, without the inventory, we don't know who John and James, his 2 sons, got into their household. So we're trying to build back using John and James's records to fill in that missing piece. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? We've seen this before in some other projects that I've worked on. We were doing some institutional research, and we were looking at the records of all the enslaved for an institution. And the institution said, we don't have any records. So we said, okay, we're going to need to build out the number of records using outside sources. So it's going to be county records and city records and land records and deeds and census records. And that's going to fill in how all the missing pieces. And then we ended up a couple years into the project, we realized because one of the archivists found a box that was mislabeled, and they did have the records. What was great, was frustrating because we're like, we could have saved us a whole couple years of work, but at the same time, what the records revealed is what the outside records were showing us completely matched with what was going on inside the institution.
Oh, wow.
That was really,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, there's still a lot of work going on that project, and I had to leave it behind, but yeah. So that's what you're using is other outside records, or and when I say outside, I mean you have the record that's missing. What other pieces can help inform
Yes.
the missing information? Yeah. So, any questions? All good? My goodness, we are moving right along. Okay. So some of you may have seen this before. We know that there is, that John Blair sent a girl named Dolly or Doll, or it could be 2 different people because it's 2 different attendance lists to the Williamsburg Bray School. And so we wanted to see whether the Dolly who ended up in Louis Burwell's family was the Dolly that is the ancestor for Miss Loretta Burwell, who has visited us in the last, in April. But the problem was John Blair's daughter Anne also had a Dolly in her records, and his daughter Sarah had a Dolly in her records. And so what this means is for us to be able to distinguish these three Dollies, we have to look at each of these 3 people's records. We've done a pretty exhaustive search on Christian Blair's and Christian Blair Burwell's records and Louis Burwell's records right now. We need to start tackling Anne Blair and Sarah Blair and see where we can find that Dolly, if we can distinguish which Dolly was the one that went to the Bray School. So we're getting there, but you know, again, it's step-by-step research. For John B, we definitely have hit kind of a brick wall here. We see John B listed in the tax records in Mecklenburg County. He's also in Louis Burwell's plantation. And he also appears, when Louis Burwell dies, he appears in John Blair's estate inventory, still with that last initial, B, instead of spelling out his name B-E-E, the inventory taker probably just heard, oh yeah, he's John B, and just put an initial. But by the time the estate was in Chancery Court and was being distributed, the B is lost, and we have 2 men named John. One who went to John Burwell, the son of Louis Burwell, and one who went to Alexander Boyd, who was the son-in-law of Louis Burwell. So now we need to track both of these people's households to see if we can distinguish which John was the John B, who was the son of Isaac B, who went to the Bray School. Isaac did. So that's we're kind of stuck right now until we can get into more Alexander Boyd and Jonathan Burwell records. So the other thing that's also tricky is we have a valuation here in the inventory for $100. And what we have here in the estate inventory, or actually, yeah, it's either pounds or dollars, and I can't remember which one they're using. But by the time they're in Chancery Court, this John was valued at 35 pounds, and this John with his mother Patience is listed for 110 pounds. And so this should give us a little bit of a clue whether this is the John, but we haven't really been able to link Patience with John B's mother. My guess is this John is John B, but we've got to do an exhaustive search on both just to rule it out. So we're a little stuck there, but we'll get there. So I promised we would talk a little bit more about Ripon. So what we're doing with Ripon is we're building out a timeline, and we're looking at all the points where Ripon is listed. And this is an abbreviated timeline, but I have starting in 1784 when we first, or 1783 when we first see Benjamin Bates household. And then we start with 1785, and we're going year by year by year by year. What are the entries for Ripon? And so we see all of these entries for Ripon, that he was under 21 in 1785, he's older than 16 in 1786, and then he's on his own in his own household in all these other later years. The issue is that for Ripon, who attended the Williamsburg Bray School, he attended in 1765. So for him to be under 21 in 1785, it's a little tight, and we've got to look at those ages. I don't want to get hung up on the exact ages, but I also need to make sure we're taking this into consideration. For Ripon, who's associated with Philip Ludwell Lee over in Westmoreland County, there was a young Ripon listed in the estate inventory, and his age is given as 35, which is way outside the time frame for the Ripon who attended the Williamsburg Bray School. But he's listed as one of 3 house carpenters. And the reason that's important is because his enslaver who sent him to the Bray School was Anthony Hay. He was a cabinet maker here in town. And so could this Ripon be of the Anthony Hay household? And his age is just all messed up because nobody paid attention to really when he was born and giving him the right age for him. And so we know that in 1785, he is given to Philip Ludwell Lee's daughter and son-in-law. Ripon is bequeathed to them and to their household. So we know we've got 2 different people because we've got 2 different timelines showing it's 2 different people, because he can't be enslaved in 1785 in Westmoreland County and free in York County in 1785. So that's going to be part of building these timelines. The timelines will help you distinguish when you have more than one person of the same name, because again, we can't have 2 people with these 2 different statuses, free and enslaved, at the same time. What we're going to have to do next is really dig into this age and how we associate Ripon with either Anthony Hay, Benjamin Bates, or Philip Ludwell Lee. So that's a little bit about timelines and tables. The next thing we're going to do, so yes, so Ripon freed by Bates and young Ripon 35. What we need to do then is have a research log or a research to-do list or a next steps. And so what are the next steps? These are going to be the next steps for us for looking at Ripon. We need to establish the connections between Anthony Hay and Benjamin Bates and or Philip Ludwell Lee. What happened after Anthony Hay died? Where did Ripon go? Can we see in the records? What's the association between the Hay family and the Bateses, or the Hay family and the Ludwell Lee family? We're going to contact the Stratford Hall historian to see if they have any more information about Ripon. We're going to research the court order books for any information about any of these 5 people, and the deed books. And where is the emancipation record for Ripon? If Benjamin Bates is freeing him, there should be an emancipation record in the court record. He may be able to explain in that emancipation record how he came to have Ripon in his household. we're going to check the York County Chancery Court records. The Library of Virginia has digitized a lot of the county Chancery Court records. They haven't yet gotten through the York County records yet. But if you go to the Library of Virginia, you can go and ask them for those records if you know kind of around the date that you're looking for or the name of somebody you're looking for. And we also know from previous research that the Bates family is a prominent Quaker family. So we're going to look at those church records. We're going to look at those Quaker records to see if we can find any information about Benjamin Bates, about Ripon, about if Ripon's now part of the Quaker meeting group. We don't know, but that's another record that we're going to need to check. So the strategies that I've been trying to go over are the fact that you need to use other records to fill in the gap. You're going to need timelines and tables to kind of keep track of the information and also help distinguish between two people of the same name, and then always a research to-do list. And then when you finish that task, make sure you check off that you did it. And so you don't go back and do it again. Believe me, I've done that before. And what was the result? And so it's called it's formally, if you're doing formal genealogy, it would be a research log, and you would write down what the task was, where you did that task, and what the result was, any source citations, and lots of dates just to keep track of that information. But I hope to be that organized one day.
Hello. I found them.
That's a good idea.
Hello.
My name is Ayana. I found the emancipation record for Ripon for Bates.
Did you?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I found it.
So
Go ahead.
So tell the group, are you willing to share with the group? Is he associated with Anthony Hay?
It didn't state anything about that. So basically what happened was, I guess in 1784, Robert Pleasance had sent out an ultimatum for all of the Quakers to free their slaves, and to stop backsliding, or he was going to kick them out.
Okay.
Pleasance was a cousin of Fleming Bates' wife through the Jordan family. And he wrote him a letter stating that he, in the past, desired to free his slaves, but never really did it. And he was wondering when that was going to happen. And it was a really long drawn out letter. I have a copy of that letter as well. So in 1785, when he died, his wife decided to free the slaves that she had from Fleming. And when she freed the slaves from Fleming, their son Benjamin also freed his. If you look at a lot of the emancipation records during that time, Benjamin is actually part of the people who were present or was written down as signing off on a lot of those emancipation records. So I take it that him and Robert Pleasance went around harassing people.
That's awesome, because I've seen in the free registers, people will say I was emancipated by Benjamin Bates, or I was emancipated by James Bates, but I hadn't seen the record before that. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, no problem.
Elizabeth, this is Jeanette.
Hey, Janet.
Ayana is my cousin. That's Bonnie and I. That's where the information we were sending you was coming from.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And this is Teddy Ashby,
yeah.
Elizabeth, and I'm working. We're going to start on a project called the 339. And what the 339 is, I'm in Philadelphia, everyone. And so the manumissions for the Quakers records are at Swarthmore College and Haverford College. And when they did the manumission, like she said, once the Quakers said, you cannot have any enslaved people, you can't own any enslaved people. If you didn't do it by a certain date, as John Corliss of Asbury Park didn't do, then you were removed from the Quaker rolls you're no longer a Quaker. But in any event, the manumission papers, there's two of them, because they had to send to the record keeper a copy. They had to make a copy because you don't have no copying machines. So it was a copy they had to go send to the record keeper for the Quakers to confirm they had manumitted their enslaved person. And then there was a copy that they gave to the enslaved person so they could be confirmed that they were no longer enslaved also. So there's two papers.
2 papers, okay.
Yeah,
But anyway, Haverford College and Swarthmore is a wonderful resource site, even
Yeah.
for the Quakers in Virginia,
Okay,
because somehow or other, somewhere when I'm reading Ben Franklin's, he wasn't a Quaker. I'm reading Ben Franklin's book biographies. There were Quakers that were actually kicked out of Pennsylvania and sent to Virginia. I haven't found out why they were kicked out of Pennsylvania yet, though.
right.
But anyway, that's all. All of that is a trail, paper trail for you.
Okay, thank you. And Iana,
Welcome.
thank you so much for sharing your research. You just kind of,
yeah, no problem. So
Yeah. So
I
the
think
339 is a number of enslaved people that me and a group of people, we are researching to find their descendants.
okay. Well, I
Okay.
tell you, you kind of queued up the next slide, lovely for me. My next piece of advice was going to be to collaborate, talk with everybody. And we are very, very fortunate to work with a wonderful, wonderful group of descending community members, just like you just witnessed, that are digging into this research and also helping and giving us clues. We have been reaching out to local history societies. Do not be shy about emailing your state and national archives. I was just emailing National Archives earlier this week. And also university libraries. My intern, who I'm going to be talking about in just a second, has been really contacting a lot of university libraries, reaching out to, and also local history societies. And so we partner with local history groups such as Williamsburg History. We partner with the Rockefeller Library and SWEM libraries. But think about who else can help. When we started these monthly Zoom sessions, we weren't really sure what this was going to look like. But folks, this is what it looks like. It looks like people
Yes.
sharing all their kind of wisdom, sharing their energy and their findings with us. And the project is benefiting so much from all of this collaboration. This just is making me real happy this evening.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That's hey, great. Elizabeth.
Great.
Yes.
Hey, this is Tim Wilson in Richmond.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, I wanted to go back to Ayana and Teddy, because the Quaker movement is something that I've only touched on a little bit, but I had a former friend who is now deceased. She was getting into Powhatan County, which is about 50 miles. It's only 20 minutes away from Richmond, southwest of Richmond. But going back to the Quaker period, what time period was the manumission paper that you found, and where was it? Was it James City County or was it York?
it was York County.
It was York County. Because
and you can actually view it on familysearch.org.
Family Search.
But
Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I'm having problems with is just York County records is one thing, James City County records is another. And James City County records seem to be just missing, just like they don't have a register of free blacks where they do the descriptions of the free blacks like most of the other counties have. York County has an extensive record. They have more than one, but I've yet to find one for James City County. And then number two, with the Quaker movement, what time period was that again that you saw the York County manumission?
The manumission was 1785. I'm sorry.
1785. All right. And now Elizabeth, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that considered the post-Revolutionary War end period?
So,
1785?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, the friend of mine that was here in Richmond, when she was researching, her family came to Manchester, which is now part of South Richmond. They came from Powhatan, but they couldn't understand why some of their relatives were free and then others showed up later. But what she found out was that the Quakers in Powhatan, Virginia, had a policy where if you were over 18, you were emancipated, but if they still had a spouse, children, it's something else they had. They had terms and conditions regarding them
So
being
normally it's they have to be 21 and over.
okay. Okay.
I have a lot of Freeman family. I have a lot of their emancipation records, and some of them were underneath 21 when they were freed. So they had to be indentured out until
Yeah.
they were 21, and then
They're like
once they
32.
reached 21, yeah, then they were freed. Yeah.
Now I know that was normally the state protocol, but then when it came back to the Quakers looked like they had their own terms and conditions separate from the civil procedures. Now I'm familiar with the 21 because that's how my ancestor in Fort Eustis was emancipated, but we still don't know, we still don't have the records yet, but he's already paying taxes by the time he's 21. But he's the son of a white woman. But when it comes to the Quakers, it seemed like they had their own policy. And that's what I was listening to what you were saying and trying to equate what she was finding out before she died.
Well,
And
I think what happened with the Quakers was that before 1782, the Manumission Act, they were just freeing some of their
I
slaves.
think
They
it was
were just running around free
1774.
illegally because it was considered illegal to do so, but they were illegally freeing their slaves. And a lot of people had problems with that. I was able to bring up the record that I guess that was the main question everyone had was, when was he born? I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So the information that I got for Ripon, and I'm reading it. Oh man, my eyes are bad. Sorry.
Hey, take your
Eyes are
time.
bad. It said, I, Benjamin Bates of York County, from deliberate consideration and conviction of mine that freedom is the natural right of all mankind, and that no law, moral or divine, has given one a right to property in the persons of my fellow creatures, and being conscious to fulfill that injunction of our Lord, I do unto others as I would be done by, I don't know what that says, do declare that having under my care 8 Negroes, namely Sarah born August 1740, Stephen born June 1755, Aggie born February 1762, Jack born September 1765, Ripon born February 1768, Fanny born August 1770, Esther born July 1776, Bob born July 1783. I do for myself and my heirs emancipate the said 8 Negroes, and do relinquish all claim of property on something, I can't read that, in or to the persons of Sarah, Stephen, and Aggie immediately, and also to Jack, Ripon, Fanny, Esther, and Bob, as they shall attain the males to 21 and the females to 18 years of age. So females are 18, interesting. As witness my hand and seal this 17th January 1785, Benjamin Bates, York County. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. All of that information was great to hear.
My eyes are bad. I can't.
Oh, you
No,
did, you did
great.
wonderful.
You did
You
great.
I
wonderful.
mean, I was trying to read the script. It's you know, I gotta get it transcribed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I could give you a copy of it. I listed it to my family tree on ancestry.com.
Okay.
I think I also have that letter that Robert Pleasant sent to Fleming
Okay.
Bates also.
Okay.
Ugh. So yeah, he was born in 68, according to him.
Yeah, according to him, and that, I guess that's now that's where my questions are going, and my head is just like,
Is
okay,
it the real one, or is it the right one, or how did he
right.
get there in the
Was
first
Ripon
place?
born in the Bates household, and that's how he knows when he was born. We know that Ripon is in the attendance list at the Bray School in 1765. And
Mm.
so we've got a 2-year, longer than 2-year gap, because we know that probably around the youngest people going to the Bray School were around 3 and 4 years old. So even if we put Ripon at the youngest age, he would be born in 1762, 1763, maybe. But we also know that the ages may not have been exact on the attendance list either. And so that's that. So if we can get a connection between Benjamin Bates and Anthony Hay to see if Ripon went from the Hay household to the Bates household and then Bates freed him, that would be, that'd be so great. So that's that's where we need to work on. Oh
Yeah,
my
we have to
gosh.
figure out how he. I have looking at the ages of everyone, right?
Yeah.
Sarah's the oldest. She's the eldest one. She looks like she could have been the mother to everyone there, or at least to Ripon,
Okay.
because the other female isn't old enough to be his mother. She would have been like 12 or 13. So I'm thinking maybe Sarah is his mother.
Okay.
If Sarah is his mother, Sarah's 40 and Benjamin is younger than her. So she must have came from someone else.
Right. These are really good questions.
You know what I mean? Like,
Are you gonna be part of the meeting next week?
I'm thinking maybe family. Maybe we need to
Yeah,
find, because the Bates family had a lot of people die around that time.
right.
So we need to be
Right.
looking into the family members who died and who might have passed on slaves, or like they said, those Quaker notes. We need those notes because I heard that they have
Right.
their slave information in those notes.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly.
And I
what-
think Robert Pleasance, he said curl. It had the name Curl on top of his letter. So I'm wondering if that's the name of their Quaker society in that town.
It could be, as
Curl.
I've also seen that be the name of a plantation or name
Oh.
of a home. And now, of course, I'm drawing a complete blank, so we're gonna have to, wow, this has been exciting, and I'm also looking at the time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's participation here. But we also did have some questions. Ayana, this has opened up so many possibilities, but I also want to, there's some questions, are any of the other names that Ayana stated in his household at the Bray School? And what was the date for Sarah again? Ayana, can you share the date when Sarah was born again?
1740.
1740. Okay. As far as the other names in the household, trying to look at the Anthony Hayes list, Ripon, Jenny, Jerry, Joseph, and Dick. I don't think any of those, except for Ripon.
Exactly.
Any of those other names on your list, Ayana?
Uh,
Jenny,
say
Jerry,
it.
Joseph, or Dick?
No.
Okay. Okay. And Janice Kennedy mentioned, yes, the 12 can be old enough to be a mother.
12. Okay, so maybe the only other person, maybe Aggie.
Right. Right.
No, wait, no, Aggie was 62.
Oh,
Yeah, it's looking only like Sarah for at this point from I don't know, just
All right.
62 and he was born in 69. She's not old enough.
Ayana, thank you so much for sharing all this. I don't know that you were prepared to be kind
No,
of on this.
I got the invite in my Facebook messenger and I wasn't looking at it because right now I'm trying to decide if I want this job. They just I'm in negotiations right now. So when I looked at my Facebook page real quick, I said, "Oh crap, there's a meeting. Let me join it." I don't know.
Okay. Well, we are so grateful that you did join us this evening. And I do need to be respectful. We are way over time and I appreciate everybody hanging on. I think this has been really exciting for all of us who are part of this. And we are going to, I know we already have a meeting, some of us already have a meeting scheduled for next week to really look at this ribbon records and distinguish between these two. And now we have even more, thankfully, to look at and to consider. So thank you, Ayana. I really appreciate you being here. And Jeanette and Bonnie, thank you for bringing her into this group. I so appreciate it so much. Folks, I'm going to need to start wrapping us up, but if there are any other questions that anybody has regarding anything we kind of talked about this evening that maybe I can answer quickly before we close, otherwise, please feel free to
Elizabeth?
email the lab. Yes.
This is off the subject, but the Virginia Museum of History and Culture has an exhibit called Unbound Free
Unbound.
Blacks in Virginia.
Yes.
Yeah.
We in the lab were very lucky to get a special preview. And Tim, who's on the call, was also there that evening. And we had a couple descendant community members with us. And the Bray School is featured on one wall of the exhibit and includes a quote from Miss Teddy Ashby, a descendant member. So yes, if you are in the Richmond area and want to go to a fabulous new exhibit that's just opened at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. It's called Unbound, and it's really the story of the free African Americans in Virginia. And so I commend that to you. So folks, I want to thank you all so much to everyone who joined us this evening. And we're excited to have you be a part of this. We are excited about the findings that are being shared in this space. I am grateful to all of you for being here. Please stay in touch with us for the latest news and happenings with the William and Mary Bray School Lab. Next month, on July 28th at 6 o'clock for our next session, we're going to be featuring my summer intern, Mr. Tyler Lewis. He has been painstakingly researching 3 Bray School scholars, Squire from Philip Johnson's household, and Hannah and Sarah from Robert Carter Nicholas's household. He's amazing at researching, and I am so excited for you to hear what he has found. We are filling in some more information, and he has been an enormous help keeping this research going this summer with me. So next month, July 28th, Tyler Lewis will be discussing his research findings on Squire and Hannah and Sarah. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I really appreciate y'all being here. I've had a great fun this evening, and I hope some of the information that's been shared has been super helpful in your own research. But please feel free to contact me if you have any follow-up questions on any of the things that were shared this evening. And I look forward to seeing you either in this space or hopefully in person at times if you come to visit the Williamsburg Bray School building at Colonial Williamsburg. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.